Alright, how's it going, guys? Thank you for tuning in to VR Revelations. Of course, there's a car going back, sounding off in the background there as I say that. Excuse me, but I just had some rain here, and I had to open up the window to my apartment because it's been pretty hot these last couple of weeks, and it's pretty fresh right now. So, anyways, I have a follow-up video here, guys, concerning the situation in the Kursk region inside of Russia, wherein Ukraine launched an offensive. This is, not the first attempt. Ukraine has previously attempted to attack that region, but with smaller forces, right, where that Russia was able to repel. But this is, this was far more organized. It was a larger force, and this seems like a legitimate operation. I'm not sure what the intended goals were here. Usually you launch these operations with a bigger goal in mind, right? Whether it's to take control of a major city or looking forward to, use this operation as a launching point for a bigger operation, right? Or maybe as a distraction to attack from a different angle. But it doesn't really have any clear objectives, and it's not like they're not going to get repelled by the Russian forces, who have pretty much already put a stop to the operation, as we're going to be seeing from an article from the New York Times. And of course, I did. You have to sort of you have to look through all of the Western propaganda to. Every now and then, they will release an article, or someone will release an article where they're being more honest about the situation. But I did want to get it from a Western news source for all the, the Western media chills out there. So I do have that, and then I have an article from CNN where Zelensky has finally admitted that, yes, this is an operation that Ukraine launched. And so I just wanted to show you the map again, for those of you that are not that familiar with this part of the world, as most of us were not, but luckily we have these maps to look at, and this is the live view map, which is pro-Ukrainian. But you can see here the region we're talking about here is to the northwest of Ukraine. So down here is the capital. Over here to the west are the front lines, wherein Russia continues to slowly advance and push forward, and we're pretty much, Ukraine has been on the defensive for the last 2 years, continually losing battles and territory, right? Contrary to what, the Western media tried to make us believe for these past 2 years, wherein they kept telling us that Ukraine was winning, that Russia was suffering catastrophic losses, that Russia was running out of munitions, that there was soon going to be a major offensive that was going to push the Russian forces back. None of that has happened, but all of a sudden and out of the blue, shortly after the arrival of these F-16 planes, it looks like Zelensky gave the go-ahead for an operation here in the Kursk region of Russia. So they actually crossed the border, as I covered in my previous video, with over 1,000 men, dozens of tanks, and armored vehicles. So this is quite a considerable operation, which is pretty puzzling even to the experts, that they're willing to launch an operation using these tanks, these armored vehicles that are much needed, on the front lines where the main battle is. And it's pretty puzzling even to the experts, even to the pro-Ukrainian experts, because what's the objective here? are they trying to make a push for Moscow? Like, are they trying to? I mean, there's only two ways about it, right? They either go on ahead or they get pushed out. And now they're inside of Russian territory, right? So Russia is going to go harder at Ukraine in this region. And then beyond that, once they do push them out of the border, they're not going to stop there, right? This is going to backfire on Ukraine. And Russia is probably going to look to push into the Sumy region here, across the border into this Ukrainian territory, which, possibly previously it probably wasn't an objective of Russia, since their objective is over here in the western side, right, where the war has been taking place, that is being led by the U.S. and the coalition, right? So now, they've sort of made a big mistake here. This spontaneous attack, this Blitzkrieg, as I called it in the previous video, because they rushed across the border. They did gain a lot of ground, but they didn't establish, control necessarily over the land that they were going past. They even went past Russian defenses. So, but it looks like they have bunkered down. Russia is launching, bombardments via their fighter jets, via artillery, via drones. And as the days continue, they will continue to attack this area more strongly. And, it's going to be up to Ukraine. Like, if this seems to be a serious operation, they must have known that if they crossed the border, this was not going to go well with the Russian people, right? It's going to bring back memories of, World War II and even back when Napoleon invaded Russia. And let me just say, when Napoleon and Hitler both invaded Russia, they didn't just fail. The Russians pushed back and they launched their own counteroffensive, which was the downfall of Napoleon and of Hitler, right? So one thing I do know, based on the history I've read, is that when you invade Russia, you better make sure you know what you're doing, because Russians don't take lightly to incursions into their territory. And again, Vladimir Putin has been very reserved, very moderate, very temperate in the way he's been handling this war. And, if you want to believe the Western propaganda, wherein they're saying that, Russia, has no justification for this, it's a bunch of nonsense. On its, in the simplest terms, this is a coalition of the United States and its allies, launching a war via its proxy Ukraine here. So it's literally NATO, these allied countries, in a war against Russia, much like we saw Napoleon and its allies launch a war against Russia, and much like we've seen throughout history, right, where empires gather together, they make agreements. This is what is going on right here, make no mistake about it. And so the fact that Ukraine now decided to enter into Russian territory is not going to be taken lightly by the Russian populace, who will probably put more pressure on Vladimir Putin to react more harshly to this and to, call for a push into further into Ukraine. So, again, let's go ahead to this CNN article here, wherein Zelensky, after days of it being obvious that, he gave the order to launch this operation, he finally decides to admit that, yes, it's Ukrainian troops that are fighting inside of Russian territory. So this is CNN. Zelensky confirms Ukrainian troops are fighting inside Russian territory. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has confirmed Kyiv's troops are fighting inside Russia. days into the surprise Ukrainian cross-border incursion into Russia's Kursk region that has become a major embarrassment for the Kremlin. Ukraine is proving that it really knows how to restore justice and guarantees exactly the kind of pressure that is needed. Pressure on the aggressor, Zelensky said in his nightly address to the nation on Saturday, thanking every unit of Ukraine's armed forces for making it possible to push the war out into the aggressor's territory. Okay, first off, they're not pushing the war anywhere, right? They just made a small incursion, and really, this is just a PR stunt that's going to cost, more soldiers' lives, and really, it's really a terrible tactical decision because this really has no major operational benefit for Ukraine other than to show, its masters, the United States, the UK, and France, that, hey, look, we made an incursion into Russian territory, right? If we were losing the war, we wouldn't be fighting on the enemy's grounds. But they're really not fooling anyone here. Well, they might be fooling the Western audience, but they're going to get pushed out. This is serious. They're inside of Russian territory. They just escalated the conflict, and Russia's going to not only push them out of their territory, but they're going to push into the Ukrainian area in that region, if not possibly further. As I mentioned in my previous video, there's people in Russia calling for an advance all the way to the capital after this incursion into their territory. So this is really a PR stunt, and Zelensky that's exactly what he's trying to show here. The statement marked the first time Zelensky officially acknowledged the incursion, which took by surprise both Russia and Ukraine's allies. Ukrainian officials have for days remained tight-lipped about the operation, even as photographs, videos, and first-hand reports of Ukrainian soldiers inside Russia started to emerge. Ukraine has repeatedly targeted the border region of Belgorod with airstrikes, and pro-Ukrainian sabotage groups have conducted limited cross-border attacks. But the Kursk operation marked the first time that regular Ukrainian and special operations units have entered Russian territory. So, they're saying those previous attempts into incursions were sort of by, Russian separatists that were in support of Ukraine, but this one is actually the Ukrainian military, which has always been the Ukrainian military, right? And so, on top of that, there was actually an attack that was carried out on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant as well. Of course, the West is barely even mentioning this. Zelensky said that it was Russia that attacked their own plant, right? Just like the West pretty much said it was Russia that sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline. So, yeah, Russia is pretty much shooting itself in the foot. That's what the West wants you to believe with these attacks, right? With these things they control, right? That Russia has had control of the Zaporizhzhia power plant since the war began in 2022. So at the bottom here, to the southwest, that's where the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is. I believe it is the largest in Europe. So if we have a disaster here, it could be something like Chernobyl or something like that, where you could have a radiation spilling out and having a disaster in this region. So we definitely have to keep an eye out on this. And the West is saying that Russia set fire to the nuclear power plant, which is absolutely absurd. They're in control of it, right? It's just like the Nord Stream pipeline. Like, you got to be a donut to believe what the West is saying, right? That they blew up their own pipeline, that they attacked their own nuclear power plant. It's absolutely nuts. So it says here, this is a Russian news source. Ukrainian attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant can be characterized as an act of nuclear terrorism. The strike was delivered targeting the nuclear power plant's equipment, which must be cooling water of the power plant in the standard operation mode. The Ukrainian army's attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant can be characterized as an act of nuclear terrorism, Russian nuclear corporation Rosatom said in a statement on Monday. We draw your attention to the fact that today's strike was delivered targeting the nuclear power plant's equipment, which must be cooling water of the power plant in the standard operation mode, the statement reads. Therefore, this attack can be characterized as an act of the nuclear terrorism on behalf of the Ukrainian authorities, the agency said. Rosatom added that for a long time, the Ukrainian regime has been systematically attempting to carry out attacks on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the city of Energodar, or however that is pronounced. A massive attack was carried out in April with the use of drones on the city of Energodar and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, the statement reads. As a result, 3 people were wounded and one of them sustained grave wounds. In June, the Ukrainian army delivered a strike against an environmental radiological monitoring station of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in the settlement of Velikaya Namenka. The Russian Nuclear Corporation also stated that the Ukrainian army's attack on the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant can be characterized as an act of the nuclear terrorism. We draw your attention to the fact that today's strike was delivered targeting the nuclear power plant's equipment, which must be cooling water of the power plant in the standard operation mode. Therefore, this attack can be characterized as an act of nuclear terrorism on behalf of Ukrainian authorities. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, located in the city of Energodar, has a capacity of about 6, I don't even know what that measurement is, 6 GW, let me know in the comments down below, and is Europe's largest. It has been controlled by Russian troops since late February 2022, so it's under Russian control, and anytime something blows up or a missile lands, the West wants you to believe that it's the Russians launching missiles on top of themselves. Yeah. So anyways, I did want to mention that because we did have that news about the power plant there today. And so I'm not sure if that's trying to distract the Russian forces from the this operation that Ukraine launched up here in the Kursk region, but I wouldn't be surprised if they're willing to, cause a radiation spill in this region because they are growing so desperate. And so finally, let's jump into this New York Times article here where they are, admitting that the Kursk offensive here by Kyiv has stalled. So it says, Russia pushes back at Ukraine's cross-border assault, but Kyiv presses on. After several days of fighting in the southwestern Russia, both sides are claiming successes. The battles are still being waged. Okay, they're trying to make it seem like, it's a 50-50 situation, like it's even. That's a bunch of nonsense. Clearly, even by these pro-Ukrainian maps, you can see that Russia controls a lot of territory. By the way, all of this is now officially part of the Russian Federation. There's no going back. Russia is willing to go to nuclear war for this territory, right? And so there's no way that Ukraine is getting that back unless the U.S. actually wants to end the world over it, which, as I've mentioned previously, they are not. Russia is pushing back against Ukraine's largest assault into Russian territory since the start of the war, sending troop reinforcements, establishing strict security measures in the border areas, and conducting airstrikes, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. One of the strikes on Ukrainian troops involved a thermobaric missile that causes a blast wave and suffocates those in its path, the ministry said. So, again, Russia has the capability, they have the advanced weapons to stop this incursion into Russian territory. Now, they've used these weapons sparingly here and there throughout the conflict, but again, this is inside of Russian territory now, so they're not going to hold back at all to actually defend, their own territory. And all that Ukraine is doing is just giving Vladimir Putin a reason to be more aggressive in his war plan. But even as Russia has halted the quick advances made by Ukrainian troops who launched a surprise cross-border attack 5 days ago into the southwestern region of Kursk, Ukrainian forces seem to be holding ground. They claimed on Saturday to have captured a small village in the neighboring Belgorod region, and analysts say their forces control most of the Kursk town of Zutsa, about 6 miles from the border. Pasi Pyronen, an analyst from the Blackbird Group, a Finland-based organization that analyzes satellite imagery and social media content from the battlefield, said in an interview that evidence suggested that Moscow had been able to stall the major advances in Russian territory late in the week. So this is a pro-Ukrainian source here who analyzes the video, satellite imagery, and everything that are confirming what I'm telling you now, that Russia has stalled the advances, even though initially it seemed like a Blitzkrieg operation, a lightning attack, with what objective? Who knows, right? Pasi Pyronen, an analyst from the Blackbird, okay, I just read that. We're now entering the phase where the easy gains have been made, he said, of Ukraine's initial advance. This phase, for the first 3 days, saw the most rapid movement, he added. And yesterday, I think we started to see the effects of the Russian response. What all this means for Ukraine is not yet clear. It's pretty clear, as I mentioned, it's a PR stunt, right? I think what Ukraine is trying to do here is, or what they were trying to do, I guess their objective was to launch a lightning attack, right, a Blitzkrieg attack, gain as much land as they can, and then bunker down and possibly try to hold until the November presidential elections in the United States, right, in order to show the U.S. that, hey, we've taken the war into Russia's territory, we're showing you the fruits of your donations, of your labor in providing weapons to us, but now we need more support. Obviously, we can carry out this offensive. We're on the enemy's territory, which is what you were looking for, so go ahead and help us out some more. But I don't think they will be able to hold out for, the next 3 months. I think Russia is going to attack the Ukrainian forces in their territory heavily, and beyond that, I think this is going to be another major strategic failure by Zelensky, like we saw in Bakhmut, where he sacrificed a whole bunch of forces unnecessarily because he wanted to win a PR stunt. The Bakhmut holds, right? The unconquerable Bakhmut, which again was a disaster. So I think this is, Zelensky lashing out, a desperate attempt to show the U.S. that, they are actually able to launch an offensive and threaten Russia seriously. But I really don't think, the U.S. is going to believe that, right? I'm pretty sure they understand that the situation is dire for Ukraine, and I think we're going to see them expelled out of that Kursk region sooner rather than later. And the interesting thing is that we're going to have to look out for is to see if Russia not only pushes them out, but continues on to take control of the Sumy region right here, and so which I believe they will do. I believe they are going to push into the Ukrainian territory there and take control of that region, because essentially this isn't a major threat right now to Russia, this incursion, but it is sort of shocking to the populace, to the everyday man and woman who are not involved in the conflict directly. The fact that they're getting news that, hey, there's Ukraine, we're winning the war. We know we have nuclear weapons. We know that Ukraine can't beat us even with the help of the NATO forces, because they would be risking a nuclear catastrophe. But why are Ukrainian forces inside of Russia? Like, what's going on here, right? Like, we need to push them out. Like, how could we allow this? So I think that in order to prevent that, Russia is going to push them out of this region, and they're probably going to push further to take control of the Sumy region. Now, as I mentioned in my previous video, there is high-level officials within the Russian government that are calling for a takeover of all of this area here, all the way to the capital and even all of Ukraine, right? Again, it's just Vladimir Putin that is holding back the fury and the calls for an all-out war that many in Russia are calling for. So the West actually has to be thankful that it's Vladimir Putin that's in control. Again, just reverse what's going on here. Imagine if it was the United States that was in a war against Russia and a coalition of countries. Imagine if they were using Mexico to carry out their war against the U.S. And imagine if during that time Mexico launched an attack into, like, let's say, Texas, into U.S. territory, right? We'd already be in a nuclear conflict, right? But again, I think Vladimir Putin understands much more what is at stake here, and that is civilization. As I said previously, Russia cannot be defeated, and the day that Russia is defeated, the world is going to lose, because it'll be the biblical prophecies being fulfilled, right? The end of the world via fire, right? And I think that will eventually happen, but as I've mentioned before, I don't think it's going to happen over Ukraine. So I think this incursion into Kursk here was a grave mistake, and I think they're trying to, Ukraine is trying to will probably try to hold until the elections in the U.S., but I don't think Russia is going to tolerate them staying inside of their territory for too long. So we'll definitely keep an eye out on this, guys. I did notice I mentioned to forget at the beginning of the video, as I always do. It is the year of our Lord 2024, August 11th. And thank you for tuning in. Leave me your thoughts down below in the comment section. And remember, the truth is stranger than fiction. God bless you all. Have a wonderful day.